It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And here to help us do that, we have our political strategist, Mr. Josh Waters, is back with us. Josh, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good, Paul. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Now, you were in the courtroom yesterday, the public corruption trial for Senator John Woods and this big general improvement kickback scheme. What's your impression of how the proceedings went yesterday?
Yeah, I guess my overall impression was a little mixed. I think the first two witnesses yesterday clearly helped the prosecution, and I think the third witness was kind of mixed as it relates to Randall Shelton's defense. But I think the first two witnesses, especially the first one, Mr. Dwayne Pratt, he talked about, he's the executive director of the West Central Arkansas Planning and Development District out of Hot Springs, and he talked about basically, you know, what you've been talking about for years, Paul, came out in open court yesterday, that this GIS scheme that they had set up was, you know, it was a sham, and that the legislators truly did control it.
Really? I mean, so that's pretty clear then. I mean, everybody now knows the legislators do control it. This idea that they get to wash their hands and absolve themselves because it didn't come from me, it came from the planning district, is now proven to be a lie.
Yes, and, you know, there's two specific examples as it relates to this case of how that was true. First was there was a $50,000 grant of this GIS funds that originally came from the Western Central Arkansas Planning and Development District that was awarded to Ecclesia College. This was in December of 2013, and they were first contacted by Senator John Woods, but the senator that actually put his name on to sponsor it was Senator Michael Amaro. And Paul, this grant, $50,000 of taxpayer money, was sent to this college without them even applying for it. And the reason that Mr. Pratt gave for them, you know, meeting as a board and saying, yes, we approve, without even having an application, was because they feared the repercussions from the legislators of what would happen if they didn't approve this when they wanted them to.
Wow. And the witness said that. You're saying Dwayne Pratt, he said that on the stand, that they went ahead and sent the money without an application to Ecclesia because they were afraid of, which legislator? Were they afraid of Michael Amaro? Is that the one they were talking about?
He said legislators. I assume it was Lamoureux because that's who the person was to actually sponsor it. And then so that, you know, they didn't have the application. They said, yes, we'll approve this. They got the application later. And then Senator John Woods personally came by and picked up the $50,000 check and took it up to the college.
I noticed in the Doug Thompson report, there was a question asked, is that normal? Does a senator normally come to the commission to personally pick up the check? And what was the answer to that?
Never. It's never happened before.
That's so strange. Oh my goodness, this whole thing is extremely strange. But it is like you said, it is something that it's been of discussion for a long time in conservative circles of what this really is, and it doesn't appear, and now does appear to be exactly what people were saying it is. How do you get? So you got $50,000 that's sent to Ecclesia College before they even apply for it, but then they got another $50,000 grant, Josh, and was there, I guess maybe with both of these, the way I'm reading it in Doug Thompson's piece has to do with different deadlines, that maybe they were past the deadline and there was also some more bullying going on. Can you tell us about the deadline infractions?
Yes, so that first $50,000, I guess they have cycles. I'm not sure, you know, the time period on those, but basically it's like, okay, here's a round of grants that they're going to approve, and then they come back and say, okay, we're going to approve these again. So the very next cycle, another $50,000 were approved from this, you know, planning district that was outside, you know, it was down in Hot Springs, not in Northwest Arkansas. But another $50,000 was approved, and the man testified that the date that had been stamped on the application, they actually filled the application out the second time and sent it in, but the date that was stamped was the date the application was due. But he testified that was not when it was actually received, that someone had, changed the date on that. And so the second $50,000 was also awarded and sent on like nothing was wrong, even though they didn't even meet the application deadline.
Wow. It seems like really the entire process has been a deception from the time the legislature votes themselves the general improvement funds to every process. The opportunity for corruption here and deception and changing this date or sending this check when they haven't even applied for it yet. I mean, it really just seems like the entire process is being exposed as corrupt. I mean, is that your general feeling from being in the courtroom yesterday?
Yes. With Mr. Pratt's testimony combined with a few others who have testified, I would assume the jury is probably seeing through this idea that, well, actually we set up a system, and the defense tried to argue that. They tried to say, well, you had a board, right? And the board had to approve this, right? It wasn't just what the legislator says goes. And I think the jury's probably seen through that with the cumulative testimony that's been provided, saying, no, the legislators really controlled this. This was just, a sham system we set up to try to get around a Supreme Court ruling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been well established in the trial so far.
Can we talk about? We're talking with Josh Waters. He was in the courtroom yesterday, the public corruption trial of John Woods. Can we talk about specifically the contract that Ecclesia College had with Paradigm? I think it was Paradigm Strategies or Paradigm Consulting. That the government, and see, this is from Doug Thompson, the government contends a contract with an outside consultant to raise funds was a sham used to pass along the kickbacks. The defense contends the contract was a long-term project that was derailed because of a federal investigation, and Patrick Benka, who is the defense attorney for John Woods, asked a person on the stand by the last name of Novak, quote, would it be fair to say that once this investigation started, meaning the federal investigation, funds began to dry up? Novak replied, yes. So I thought that was interesting. I reread it several times because to me it seems like the defense is making the prosecution's case that the funds would be drying up because now the feds are involved and they know they're going to get caught. Were you there for that exchange? Was it? I mean, maybe it reads different than it was in real life.
Yes, I was there, and basically the line of questioning that was involved there was basically trying to show the defense's theory is that, like you said, well, Mr. Shelton was legitimately hired as a consultant, and so the prosecution called Mike Novak and had questioned him at length, and then Mr. Binka was doing the cross-examination there. And so their theory, they're trying to undermine the theory that this was a sham consulting job by saying, well, he did a little bit, here, there, and trying to bring up examples of work he had done for the college and meetings he had attended. And so that's the context of that question. And, Mr. Novak was, very quick to, talk about, how Mr. Shelton had been involved in the college. And there was a lot of testimony trying to, humanize, I guess, the college and, trying to make them not look bad. It was what the defense was trying to do yesterday in a lot of
okay. So it seems it seems to, from your characterization, it seems like I did miss the context because when the defense says, would it be fair to say that once this investigation started, funds began to dry up? Are they talking about other fundraising that Randall Shelton was allegedly attempting to do? Is that what you're saying?
Well, basically what they described as the relationship in the line of questioning that came out was that Randall Shelton was a consultant, and he basically gave recommendations of possible foundations they could reach out to, and he had some contacts at some of the local foundations that he tried to set up meetings for them. And that question, though, was basically saying, well, once this investigation happened, you couldn't even have these meetings. No one would meet with you. the fundraising that people had said, yeah, we might want to give, has dried up. People who gave in the past had stopped giving. So they actually went through some of the larger donors back from, like 2012, 2013, and went through all the donors, and the prosecution was trying to say, well, Randall Sheldon didn't help you get any of this money. And outside of, I think, of two donations, one last year, the answer was no, he didn't really execute and get the money.
It's like, well, the federal investigation made it hard to do my job. Was it the federal investigation, or was it the kickbacks that made it hard to do your job? Which one was it? Wow. Okay. So I think that definitely cleared that up for me, Josh. I appreciate it. We're talking again with Josh Waters about the public corruption trial of John Woods. He was in the courtroom yesterday. Did they talk any about where the I guess the totality of funds in these kickback allegations? They went to buy a piece of land for Ecclesia College, and did they talk any about? Did they ever develop that land? I mean, they did purchase the land, but I mean, has anything even been done with that land? Did that come up at all in court yesterday?
Yes, and that was really kind of fuzzy because the witness he didn't seem to have a real grasp on a lot of the details of really anything that went on at the college. So that it was kind of fuzzy, but he talked about, I think he called it the Hollingsworth house that had been purchased to use as student dorms, and that's being used as student dorms, and then another house that had been purchased for staff housing. But what was unclear was, and how much money they were asking for in GIF grants versus what they got, and how much of that money went to secure these properties and keep them going. So that was unclear, but what was really interesting was, they went through, I mean, there's probably 10 to 15 legislators' names that were read into the record from a lot of these documents about, getting this GIS money there. And so I thought that was very, kind of interesting that you're sitting here in court and 10, 15, 20 legislators' names are getting read off, and the witness didn't know who they were, and I bet most people in the courtroom didn't know who they were, but, people who follow politics in Arkansas are probably thinking, oh, man, why is his name involved in this? Why is this legislator's name involved?
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Were there any legislators? I know on Tuesday, Doug Thompson reported Senator Bart Hester testified. Were there any legislators that testified yesterday?
No, there were no legislators that testified yesterday. But Nate Bell was announced that he was going to be witness number 4, and they're still on witness number 3 from yesterday.
All right, so that's State Representative Nate Bell, or former State Representative Nate Bell. Mm-hmm. He's called as a witness. Any idea what that could be about, or did anything happen with that yesterday?
Yes, that was actually the very first thing yesterday morning was the counsel, I think it was the defense, brought a motion to try to prevent Mr. Bell. They had gotten word or seen an email or something that Mr. Bell was going to release some type of press release about him testifying there that day. So they're wanting to try to prevent that press release from going out before he testified, so people can kind of know what he's going to testify about. And the government's position was, we can't really stop someone from their First Amendment right to speak.
Well,
it's kind of bizarre. That was how the
day started. That former state representative Nate Bell wants to make a press release before he testifies.
Yeah. So,
man.
Yeah, but there were no legislators that testified. But I made a list in my notes, and a lot of legislators were named. Of course, John Woods, Bart Hester, Bob Ballinger's name came up for donating. Cecile Bledsoe, Michael Lamoureux was a lot of the discussion in the morning. Charlie Collins, Randy Alexander, Deborah Hobbs. There's some email exchanges talking about trying to set up meetings with Stephen Meeks, David Meeks, Jason Rayford, David Sanders about presentations with Ecclesia. So it was just, kind of fascinating. There are so many legislators it seemed involved in trying to direct money to this college.
Yeah, and it seemed to be, from what I can tell, it was because it was a Christian college. Okay, let me rephrase. Because it is a Christian college. You know, I mean, it's the Greek word for church, ecclesia. It did seem to be at least in the legislator's mind at the time, a noble thing to do. You know, send it to this Christian university. That's, you know, I mean, we all understand the liberal bent that most universities have and what they're doing to young people and that sort of thing. And so I can understand. I guess the reason I say that, Josh, is their names are being mentioned, but you know, we want to be clear that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, any wrongdoing necessarily. But
right.
Is that? I mean, do you agree with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, these were just, and it was, you know, in just emails that came up that were, okay, we're having a meeting with this legislator. They said these legislators might be willing to direct money. But I just thought it was, you know, kind of fascinating that there are all these legislators from all over different parts of the state. But like you said, you know, and I actually think the defense did a pretty good job of humanizing the college because, I mean, I think a lot of people have heard of College of the Ozarks, and ecclesia is kind of trying to go with that model of a work college, and very noble, you know, and the witness talked about how it was a ministry. I think a lot of people support that aspect of it. Absolutely. I would, you know, support that aspect of it. But what's happened since then is, I think, where people have run into support issues. But I thought they did a good job of humanizing the college and talking about what their goals were. And you never know the makeup of a jury, but, you know, I wrote in my notes, I have just here, you know, there's a lot of, you know, conservative, you know, supporting our values, this Christian college, Christ-centered. And so my thought is, if the jury, which you never know, but if the jury is more conservative, I think that probably helps the defense. At least based on yesterday's testimony.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to be interesting. I mean, you know, this all keeps coming out, you know, and what you know, when it comes to the fact that we have multiple legislators and, you know, you have multiple lobbyists that are involved in a general improvement kickback scheme where you direct general improvement money here and then you get a little on the side, you know, and the fact that we have multiple legislators involved in receiving the kickbacks, you know, there's a chance that more people knew that was going on. There's also a chance that nobody knew that was going on. You know, we just don't know until the facts come out. But anyway, Josh Waters, man, I appreciate you coming to the program. Is there anything else that the audience needs to know about what happened, or do we pretty well cover everything?
You know, there's only one other witness, and there wasn't much there, Mr. Keith Cottle. He works for an accounting group that represents ecclesia. He was mainly just there testifying as the custodian of records, the one who had kept a lot of the financial records that they were needing to get into evidence. But that was the only other witness, and then they recessed for the day, and they'll start back again this morning. All
righty, Josh Waters with Political Strategy. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for updating us, sir.
Yes, you're welcome. Absolutely. Have a great day.
All righty, you too, folks. Good morning to you. We're going to be back in just a moment. This is Conduit News Radio.